I think that one of the obstacles to that is the secrecy and shame.
Right.
That goes along with it.
Right.
Since shame promotes hiding or defensive anger.
Right.
Those kids or those women, I'm going to switch to talking about women, may not be there. They're so ashamed about what's going on that they keep it so secret that it really takes building a relationship. And even then, shame is such a powerful lie about who we are.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you made that segue, because that's exactly what I thought of when you said shame. One of the themes of the book, and I think one of the things that I really tried to do, was to help people understand that women drink with more shame oftentimes than men do. You know, for many people, a guy is on his way home from work, he stops off at the bar, has a beer or two with a couple of his buddies and goes home, and you know, they don't find anything wrong with that. But if you switch genders and a woman stops off at the bar on their way home from work, has a couple of beers, and shows up at home to fix dinner intoxicated or to help with homework, then there's a completely different attitude about that.
Yes.
And one of the things that women struggle with in terms of addictive disorders is that they are seen oftentimes as the glue in the family. And when that's not happening, then there's the shame of drinking, which is horrible, but there is the shame of being neglectful of the family, which is even worse. And so what you find with female alcoholics oftentimes is that they carry several levels of shame. They carry the shame of the behavior and the alcoholism. They carry the shame of the decrease in family functioning, not being a good wife, not being a good housekeeper. And then at that highest level, they carry the shame of not being a good mom.
Yeah.
And so one of the things in working with women is to be able to find some ways to diffuse that to the point that they can actually get past that shame to get well. It's very difficult.
And shame is so painful.
Oh.
I mean, I don't think that we realize how devastatingly painful shame is. And the nature of shame is it's private.
Yes.
It's created in relationships.
Yes.
I mean, it's a relational statement.
Right.
But then we bury it privately.
Right.
It's kind of like a cancer to my soul.
Well, and that's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it. It is a cancer to the soul. And I think that's part of what makes addiction so difficult to get to, is that you're asking people to dig into that cancer in their soul and find a way to pull it out. And that is just beyond painful.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing, and again, a lot of it's stigma and stereotypes in our culture. You know, if you refer to a guy, oh, he's just a drunk. Well, that's not a kind thing to say, but if you refer to a woman as a drunk,
there's a whole level
of
stigma on that.
That goes with that. And so I think that one of the real struggles with women is getting them to get past that shame, like you said, to pull at that cancer in their soul, and look at themselves through a different set of eyes. As someone that is worth saving, that is worth recovery, that because of her addiction, it doesn't mean she's a horrible mom. You know, a lot of the women that I've worked with through the years in therapy, and that were interviewed for the book, they talked about drinking patterns that were amazing in order to protect their images as moms and wives. One woman in particular, I remember, she never drank until everyone was in bed at night. All the dishes were done, all the kids' bedtime stories were told, her husband had fallen asleep, and she would begin drinking oftentimes at 11 o'clock or midnight at night, and drink completely isolated, alone, until 4 or 5 in the morning, sleep for an hour or so, and then get up and do lunches and breakfast and whatever. And that was her pattern. And the pattern was strictly constructed that way in order to avoid the shame of feeling like she didn't do the things she needed to do as a wife and mother.
Right, so that she could keep the image of being the perfect mom and the perfect wife.
Right. And that's
then maintaining that image then adds its own level
it does.
of
it does.
shame and compulsivity to maintain. What a vicious cycle.
Yeah, some of the moms that you run into that look like I call them moms on steroids.
Yeah.
You know, they're perfect, everybody looks perfect, everything is perfect. Those are the ones I have the most concern about, because they have worked so hard to keep the image up in order to counteract the shame they feel for their drinking, that they have worked themselves into, this frenzy of being super mom, which is so sad.
And then let's add the level of spirituality on top of that, because super moms are also going to be super moms in the church.
Absolutely.
And our most prized volunteer, because the church door is open, they're going to be there. They're probably heading the children's ministry, leading the choir, working nonstop in the women's ministry, and
absolutely
don't poke too deeply.
You're exactly right. Once you start checking in, poking around, you're in trouble. But you're right. There are so many women that eventually show up for treatment and it's funny because there are a lot, and I want to maybe contrast this with the men a little bit. People say, well, did you know that Joe went to treatment? Oh, I'm so glad. He has such a bad drinking problem, and bless his heart. And on the same level, if you shift it around to some women that I know and have worked with, oh, well, did you know that Mary went to treatment? What?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Mary? Oh my gosh, because she was in charge of the children's ministry. She was president of the PTA. She was the soccer mom. And I think it's interesting because there's always much more surprise of women seeking treatment than men, because the image has been so well protected by them. And what a burden to carry. And even spiritually, I think sometimes that that struggle with women too spiritually. If I'm not who I say I am not who I am, trying to portray to my children I am, and that conflict of, who I am and who I say I am is such a spiritual conflict anyway.
And I'm sitting here wondering, to what degree does our culture also contribute to that?
Oh.
I'm just reflecting back that, what did my grandmother, she happened to work out, I come from a family where women have always worked outside the home. However, the expectation for that, and I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan. You remember that commercial?
I do.
Yeah, I thought you would.
I do.
But the pressure to be everything, do everything, compete, plus, you're not only working full-time when you're in the work marketplace and doing it as competently as you're capable, and I want to add as competently as men, because that's often in male-dominated industries. That would be the subtext.
That's right.
To that.
That's right.
But then I'm coming home and expected to carry on as if I'm a full-time homemaker. And we can't. There's just not enough hours in the day or energy or bandwidth to do all that.
And there's actually one of my favorite paragraphs in the book speaks to that. That there is so much put on working outside the home, working in the home, and this is what's interesting, I think, about the use of alcohol and other chemicals. In that setting is that it sometimes provides the only relief that women have from the pressure and the stress of all of the different roles that they assume. And when you talk to women about their drinking, you find very few women that will say, I just wanted to party and have a good time. That's not what you hear. What you hear is, I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
I was just at the end of
relax.
my rope. I couldn't relax.
I couldn't turn my mind off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you find that oftentimes women's entrance into addictive disorders, especially alcoholism, is through a very different door than many men go through. And it is more about relaxing. It is more about turning your mind off. It is more of an escape. It's often treatment for anxiety. You know, alcohol is a great medication for anxiety disorders. It doesn't work, but it's a great at the time. And so you find that the motives are different for women, the way they drink is different, the shame is exacerbated for women, and that therefore all the way around, women in addiction represent an entirely different picture than we've seen, I think, previously.